Seth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like it's been a long time coming. I'm stoked.
Long overdue. I'm so glad it's happening right now and we're talking. Nice to see you.
100%. Nice to see you as well.
So you are from the nicest nation in the world, right? You're Canadian.
100%. And you know what? The rumors are true. We are absurdly nice people.
How did God make you all so freaking kind? Because it's true. I mean, there's stereotypes, and then there's like wrong stereotypes, and there's like right. And this one's so right because you go there and you want to be proven wrong as an American. You're like, nah, this is the stereotype. No, it's like I was just in Toronto 2 weeks ago, and I was telling my wife, I'm like, no, every time I'm here, it's like the kindest people. What is it?
Yeah, we're just really nice. We like to be helpful. Like, I don't know what it is. Well, like, I feel like it's like drilled into us just being polite and kind and nice. And so you double that as well with like, obviously, like people have different family values, but like, I feel like kindness has been like a big part of my family values and how I was brought up. So I feel like
Yeah.
both Nish and I mean, you know, Nish as well, obviously, but like, we're like cut from the same cloth where I think we're like some of the nicest people you'll meet.
It's true, but it's not like, like Stepford wife, like fake nice, where you're just gritting your teeth and they really are just horrible and they just have manners, quote unquote. It's not that. It does seem genuine. So I don't know what it is energetically, but it's true. And
You know,
yeah,
I think also like we're kind of trained as well, like in Toronto, like even though like I lived like the last 10 years before we moved to LA, downtown Toronto, like the hub of the city, and still like you'd go into like your local coffee shop and there's still this like I don't know, like culture of like talking to people. Like it's just really easy. Like you get into the elevator, like you say hi, like it's not a big deal, you know, it's just you're nice to people.
yeah. Well, I'm from right across the lake, Great Lake in Pennsylvania. And it's like Pennsylvanians are nice, but they're not like Canadian nice. It's like a different level. So anyways, what was it like being a Canadian, like being thrown into Southern California, Los Angeles? What was that like?
You know, well, like I am of the belief that you kind of get the energy that you are putting out into the world. Like I'm a little bit woo-woo like that. So I have to say that no matter where I've been placed, I've always had a really good experience. Like I remember there was a time where I was staying in Paris for a little bit of time and I remember people saying like, "Oh, so if you're gonna have a really hard time, like French people are just like they're not the nicest." And I got there and I had the best experience because I felt like I was always really nice to people and I was just curious and like I would try to engage like okay, fine, like I speak a little bit of French and so that helps, but my French is not good. But I think like it's the energy that you put out. So it's been the same thing in LA, you know, where I'm always just like kind. And I really do think that there is truth to killing people with kindness. And I've seen that even just with like people who are maybe not in the best mood. Like obviously it's like in your day to day, but even as a business owner, like I remember when Nish and I first started Arrae, we would sometimes get people being mean and just like our customer service, like, you know, just like email, and they didn't realize they'd be speaking to us. And my policy was always be like the kindest possible. And people would just end up apologizing if they weren't nice to begin with, because I really think that you always get back the energy that you put out into the world. So I'm like happy that I was brought up with those values and that, you know, I grew up in Canada where like that's like the value, if I would say like the country almost, because I've been able to bring that into wherever I'm placed. And I think it's been a blessing.
And even if you get someone that is not having a great day, they're kind of angry and triggered, the power of holding space for them and transmuting that sort of negative energy into something positive, it is true. It is true. Like being in the service space, like in telehealth, I have a lot of experience of someone that when people don't feel well, they're not always showing up as their best version of themselves, and you have to realize that. And you probably see the same in your space too, of like dealing with customers that are maybe they're seeking you out because you have great solutions for the times when you're not feeling so well.
Absolutely. And I think having empathy and understanding that, you know, people, their reactions to the world are often a result of what's going on inside. And so, you know, just holding space, being kind wherever you can, even if someone is reacting in a way that, it's like not matching your energy, still like you hold your ground. Because I don't know. I think that letting someone's energy frazzle you, it doesn't get you to a positive solution. So just like holding true and just like knowing that, okay, this person's dealing with their things, but I can double the knife, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, for sure. Can we go back to the early days of Array? Like before a brand is a brand, it's a concept, right? It's a dream. Where did the dream of Array come from?
So essentially, I got into the holistic health and wellness world out of like sheer desperation, truthfully, and I never used to believe in it. So I had a history of just a very poor immune system, whereby I remember like high school, college, I was always that girl who was sick, taking antibiotics, getting better, doing it all like over and over again, to the point where, there were times where I became antibiotic resistant to certain things because
Mm,
of how often I was being prescribed antibiotics. So, anyway, ultimately, I ended up hitting my breaking point when in my early 20s, this was when I had my first job and I loved my job, right?
mhm,
But I had this chronic cough and ultimately I ended up fracturing my rib. And when I went to my doctor, they did the x-ray and they were like, oh yeah, it's fractured. I was like, okay, well, what do we do to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again? Because I'm 20 to 23 at that point. Something like this shouldn't be happening. And my doctor was like, okay, well, here's some codeine, you go home and rest. And I was like, yeah, but then what's the game plan? And there was no game plan. And so at that point I was so frustrated that I was like, okay, well, I've been doing things a certain way, it's not working, let me look into holistic stuff. Even though back then it was not, that the industry wasn't what it is today. Now it's
mhm,
accessible, it's cool, it's not just this like crunchy granola field. It's,
mhm,
there's legitimate people that you look up to who are talking about it. It
mhm.
wasn't the case back then, but I was just desperate. So I decided to read whatever I could get my hands on, be my own guinea pig. And that's kind of how I got into it. And, from there, just being someone who was a hyper consumer, because I was a creator at that time as well, like throughout my journey, I could not understand why the skincare industry had progressed the way that it had, whereby it was so user friendly. It was also really beautifully packaged. You just knew what to buy as a consumer and you knew you'd see results. And in supplements, I knew that it was possible to get results because I was doing it for myself, but it was like dosing different, like individual ingredients. There were no finished formulas that I really wanted to use. And so, my goal with Niche, we realized that there was this big white space in supplements and that we could really make a difference, hopefully, in this category. So, honestly, well, like I was sitting on the couch one day and I was telling Nish, I was like, Nish, I wish that we could just create this brand that would solve for these problems that everyone's talking about. And I know that there's solutions. And he's like, well, we should do it. And I was like, really? Because I was like in my brain, like, telling him about this dream brand that I would like, just theoretically have if I could just snap my fingers. And he's like, okay, well, we should do it. And I was like, really? Like, yeah, let's do it. And so that was kind of the like dream, or like the kind of thought process behind Arrae, and now here we are 4.5 years later.
I love it. So, how far as a couple, 4.5 years, how long have you guys been together, you and Nish?
12.5 years.
12 years. So, this wasn't a new relationship. Were you married at this point or?
No, so we had this conversation back in 2018 and we got married in 2020. So we had this idea. We got engaged in 2019. We actually put our wedding money towards Array and we didn't have a wedding. So that's kind of what we used to launch the company. And Nish and I have always, we just knew we'd work well together because we are so good at such different things. Like he could never do what I do, and vice versa. I could never do what he does. And we always had this like mutual kind of reverence for the way that each other's brains worked. We did vastly different things throughout our careers ahead of Array, and we just knew we'd make a good team. And so, we weren't married by that time, but obviously we got engaged throughout the process, like pre-launch. And we got married in 2020, and it's been the best working relationship ever.
Yeah. So what is this is interesting because it's one thing to be married and it's one thing to have a business partner. It's another thing to have both. Like you said, like that you guys both complement each other so well. Like what are you good at that he's not and vice versa? Like what are your strong suits between the two of you?
So I handle all things brand, vision, trend forecasting, kind of like launch strategy for everything that we do. Meanwhile, Nish sits on more of the technical side. So he's very like strategy business minded. He's able to like growth hack certain things. So when it comes to his brain, it almost like he's very good at solving puzzles. So say for example, like I don't know, like we're stuck on something and we need to like push past it to get to a new growth metric. He'll be able to do that. And he'll be able to do it like this. So he's
Hmm.
exceptionally good at that. He's also really good at project managing. So it's like again, another analogy, I feel like his brain is really good at handling all the different tabs that are open and keeping tabs on all of the tabs perfectly. So we're just good at different things like that. Whereas, like, I feel like my strengths are trend forecasting, as I just said. So I feel like I have a really good pulse on like what the next big thing is going to be. And it's weird that I've predicted a lot of things that have come to pass in this space. I think just because it's of such a personal interest to me. And I think I'm just kind of like
Hmm.
ahead so I can see like what's happening. And
Hmm.
then, of course, like I am good at kind of like buzz and kind of the cool factor around a new product or like
Hmm.
figuring out how to message it out, all of those different things. And so I would say he's much more technical and I'm much more creative is like the easiest way to put it. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's been a fun like way to work together.
for sure. Have you like how do you guys handle any disagreements or like if it's something in the marriage and then you have to go to work or vice versa, you have a work issue then take it home. How do you any pro tips for maybe partners that are also in a business relationship?
Yeah, 100%. I think being really vocal is super important. So say for example, we have a debate at work. And by the way, like we debate at work really openly in front of our team. And the reason we do that as well is because we really want our team as well to be empowered to challenge each other in order to get to the best possible solution or slash like end decision, right? And we do that because and we also do it in a way to show that like okay we can have this like very tough conversation and then we go back to our like really good interpersonal relationship. So Nish and I, like if we have like a heated debate at work, we know that it's like we're co-founders, we're debating on a specific thing in order to get to the best possible solution. There's nothing personal here, it's
Hmm.
simply a disagreement. And we've been working together, like we founded the company 4.5 years ago. Not once has a disagreement in work like bled over into our personal lives because we know it's nothing personal. Now, when it comes to marital things, like where we're working through something, we are able to kind of put it away. So even if, first, I think because we've been together for a long time, we're like exceptionally good communicators and we're able to kind of like figure out a problem and put it to rest, hopefully by the end of the day. But if not, and we're going to work the next day, it is like, we're going to table this, we're going to pick it back up. And also, I think oftentimes when people have emotionally charged responses, it's because they're responding to things so quickly, like let's say within a relationship or marriage or whatever, right?
Hmm.
So I think also having that space where we break up a discussion so that we're able to like get air, like think about different things. I think it allows us to come back to our rational slash logical brains, which is something that we always strive to do because our goal isn't who's right. It's more so like how can we come to an amicable solution with whether it's within our marriage or like within work, but let's talk about our marriage. That like if we're going through
Hmm.
something, our goal isn't like, oh, I'm right, you're wrong, but it's like how can I see this from your lens to, understand why you acted this way and
Hmm.
vice versa. And the goal is to get to a place where we're both happy. And
Yeah.
so having that, like sometimes even a break of like the workday in between, it really does help, if
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. So what you're saying is to be a successful couple that works together, we need to both be Canadian. I think that's the secret. It's like
absolutely. That helps for sure.
It's like if they've learned nothing else, like try to be a Canadian at all times. So okay, the first skew, the first Arrae skew, which by the way, I've never told you this, but like I've been a fan of what you and both have been doing since you've come out. Like it's just I'm a massive fan, super smart. And I love you guys. So I've never told you that publicly and privately.
So
So
thank you.
yeah. So take me through the first skew was the bloat formula, right? That was the first one. So what was the inception of the bloat Arrae formula?
So, Will, the thing was that something that I noticed back before we launched Arrae was every conversation that I had with my friends, like whether it was a group setting or it was just a one on one, within the course of an hour, someone would always talk about the fact that they were bloated.
Mm-hmm.
This would just inherently come up in a conversation, whether it was like in a brunch or a dinner setting where it was like, oh, my food's really bloated me, or like, oh, yeah, I had like stomach, issues when I was flying, or something or the other. So it was clearly an issue that I would say majority of people were experiencing in some way or form. So when this pattern, what we did was we decided to triangulate this theory that I had, and we went and spoke to different doctors and understood. And I mean, I'm sure you can also speak to this as well, being a practitioner yourself, that, typically bloating slash digestive distress, it's tied to anxiety as well. And it's almost like an infinity loop. And because of sometimes the fact that a lot of us are dealing with a lot in our lives, it can kind of lead to the digestive distress. And then, of course, there's our quality of food and how we're eating. And, it really is something that's plaguing the entire population. And so that was really the thought process and why behind bloat. And for
Mm-hmm.
me personally, I had dealt with bloating and digestive distress almost like every time I was going out to eat. And it was getting in the way of me living my life. And so when I had figured out how to troubleshoot it for myself, it was really then when we decided, okay, we want to come up with a formula for bloat. It was figuring out a formula that would be like the best possible formula that would work as quickly as possible, right? So we went through a number of different iterations, but I will never forget the moment where we found our existing iteration and we decided this was the one. It was like 2019, I want to say. And Nish and I had gone out for Italian food, and pasta inherently, it just like, it was wrecking havoc in my system. And we went out, I'd had like a little bit of pasta. I came home and I was like doubled over because my stomach hurt so much. And I was like, well, now is a good time to try this formula and see if this is the one. And I swear to you, in 20 minutes, I was like, I forgot that I was even uncomfortable. And I was like, I had this realization. I was like, oh my God, I took bloat 20 minutes ago and my stomach is like, it's not hurting anymore. It's flat again. Like, what the hell? Like, we've like landed on the one. And
Mm-hmm.
I just remember feeling like it was just going to change everyone's life, because I feel like we are spending our mental real estate worrying about the fact that we're uncomfortable. We just cannot operate at our like full optimal. And all of us have so much to offer in this world that I was like, if we can take this problem away, and I know it seems small, but it's not. It's not if it's eating into how you're feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we landed on that formula, I was like, this is gonna change things. Like, this is gonna change people's lives. And I was so excited. And it's been incredible to see the reception and just the fact that we've been able to help people with the product.
Yeah. What are some of the actives in there? And obviously the formula is so unique to that formula, but like what are some of the key actives that you use?
So we have bromelain in there, which is a very powerful fruit-based digestive enzyme. It comes from pineapple. Then we have slippery elm, we have dandelion root, ginger root, lemon balm, peppermint. So it's an excellent combination of different herbs and a digestive enzyme that essentially just kind of targets all the different places where digestion can get a little bit slower, or like maybe there's gas buildup or slower transition times. Essentially, the goal was to target everywhere where things could go wrong and really hope to optimize it. And for us, we make sure that all of the actives, like all of the ingredients within our formulas, are extremely active. So we are really sourcing the highest potency ingredients. Like we're really particular about where we're sourcing things from. And that's kind of how we've been right from the start, which is why we grew in popularity so quickly, because this was a product that people would take and they were like, damn, I feel the impact that after taking it. It's not that I'm taking it and I'm like, oh, is it working? Like you feel it right away. And so those are the ingredients in bloat. And I like, even for me, like we had Friendsgiving last night and literally everyone was popping the bloats after our big dinner.
That's funny. All right. So you mentioned, even you're in business 4.5, 5 years at this point. It's relatively short period of time. You've exploded on the scene in the space really quickly. How quickly was it? And obviously it's results driven, so that spreads like wildfire. Like people then tell a friend, then tell a friend, and tell a friend because they're seeing change in their digestive issues, improvement in their digestion issues. But how fast was it that when you realized, oh wow, like this is really catching on?
So, I mean, I would say it was within. So, okay, I'll tell you exactly the timeline. So, we launched, and just like a regular company, it was initially like it was through my audience who started to tell people. And then from there, I would say like the biggest spike that happened was maybe 3 months in or 2 months in, when Melissa would always be grateful to that girl. She's incredible, but she talked about bloat. And that initially got like a whole segment of like customer base. And then we started to notice that people were ordering over and over again. And then it was all of these organic mentions about how the product was helping people. So I would say within like 6 months of the company like having launched, we were like, this is a real business. Like
Hmm.
this is not a side hustle. Like we are serious. Like we are in this and this is gonna become something. Within our first year of business, we had done $1 million, which I know is like very difficult for startups. So as soon as we hit that milestone, we were like, oh my God, because we knew like that was always a North Star for us, where we were like, we would look at startup land and like look at all these metrics of like strong startups. And it was always those startups that had done like a million within the first year. That was kind of like what we held ourselves against. And when we hit that milestone, Nish and I couldn't believe it. We were like we were just completely in awe. So I think like at that point, that was like the second marker where we were like, okay, this is serious. And at also we had been able to do it profitably, where we hadn't raised any money. We didn't raise any money until like a year and a half in. So we were running profitably. We didn't even need any money. And so we were like, okay, there's clearly a lot of traction, even in terms of people coming back. So I would say like those were like the big markers of,
Hmm.
it like taking off.
That's amazing. Melissa Wood's great. I mean, I have a Melissa Wood story. This had to have been like 10 years ago or something like that. I mean, she was not, I mean, not what the world knows today. And we were at this function in Tucson, Arizona, and we both had to get
Mm-hmm.
to the Phoenix airport. So we all, like, was 6 of us. We crammed in this tiny little rental car and drove from from Tucson to Phoenix. And all the people in that car, like, so we've ended up doing such interesting different things in our career, but I still think about that random car we all crammed into. And she really blew up, I think, during COVID, right? It was like during
Yes.
2020 she just like exploded with her home workouts.
Yes. So it was really interesting, Will, because initially when Melissa talked about us, I think she was sub 200,000 followers, but they were engaged. So it wasn't nearly as large as her community is today, but they were engaged and they trusted her. And I think like I've always respected her because of kind of that authenticity with
Yeah.
which she's kind of run her entire brand. It's not changed no matter how small or how big her follower base is. And I also love hearing stories like the one that you're saying, because it's really interesting at the start of your career kind of to reflect back on those like early days and then look in like, like 5 years from now or whatever, like now sitting here 5 years and like looking back, I'm like, oh damn, like I was in the room with like a lot of me and my friends who are just starting their businesses, and look where we are now right now. So it's just
Hmm.
really interesting to have those stories as well. I think it's like funny to like look back and see how
Yeah.
everyone's gone in different paths and like done something
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it really is. So what was the second skew? Like, and why? And why did you pick the follow up? Because you had you said a legendary, iconic formula. Was there pressure to be like, man, we have to come out with something as powerful or more?
So when we launched the brand, well, we launched with Calm and Bloat, the two of them, because again, we wanted to target anxiety and
Yes.
bloating, but Bloat was the one that really blew up. Calm has a steady state of like very loyal like consumers who keep coming back over and over again. But Bloat was like our like superstar hero product. So we were always really intentional about our product launch schedule because number one, as a startup, there's only so much that you can do. And for us, our philosophy has always been if we cannot produce the best possible product, then we don't want to take it to market. So
Hmm.
our third product was actually sleep. And so that was the first product we released after our initial two. We didn't release that for, I wouldn't say like almost a year and a half until our like the launch of the company. That's when we released sleep. Now, the reason we released sleep was because I personally believe, and I know that the science backs it up as well, that sleep is a really like foundational thing when it comes to our overall wellness. And
Hmm.
it really does impact everything from our mood to our overall gut health, what we're reaching for, our hunger
Hmm.
cues, ghrelin and leptin, like it really does like impact all of the hunger hormones as well, right? So that was something that we really wanted to help people with. And so we came up with a melatonin free formula. Again, sleep is one of these products that is not a hero product for us because it's always been our gut health product, but it is something that's foundational in terms of people's health and wellness. And it was something that people wanted help with. And for us, whenever it's come to product formulations, we've always listened to our community. And so
Hmm.
that was why we came up with sleep because we just felt like it was something that people needed help with.
Hmm. And you look at the research of gut health and sleep too. Like poor sleep
Exactly.
can really throw off your gut circadian rhythm, and yeah, so it's all tied in the same. The I'm thinking of your sort of early days and throughout your career, this community that you've cultivated and this authenticity that you have with your followers and other people you mentioned, and you have this sort of trusted voice in on social media. Has social media changed for you over the years? Like how would you compare how you see social media now versus in the early days?
That's such an interesting question. Look, I think that what's evolved is the different platforms. And I
Hmm.
think that the brands who continue to succeed are able to also evolve with, I guess, what consumers are looking for. So I think something interesting that's happened within the last 4.5 years is the democratization of the influencer, right? So I think the brands who've succeeded are those and who will continue to succeed are those who give their consumers online an equal amount of attention and care as they do with the influencers that they work with or that they have relationships with. So, I think smart brands always had that philosophy, right? So like for us, we always wanted to treat our consumers like influencers. But if brands didn't do that, they have to now because look at TikTok. Anyone can go viral. It can be your neighbor. Like it can be someone who goes from 0 to 1 million. Look at Alex Earl, right? So I think that it's just being able to move with the times and just respond to how things are changing. So, initially when we started the brand, TikTok was just starting out. This was 2020. And it like the proliferation of TikTok as a platform, especially in the realm of having experts on there. Back then, it was more of like dances and things like that. So
Hmm.
just being able to evolve and kind of get on the different platforms, respond to the consumer where they're at as well, I think has been really important as well.
Do you have a favorite platform to connect with your community?
I would say Instagram is probably still our favorite
Hmm.
from a brand perspective, at least for sure, because I think it's where people are the most engaged. I think TikTok is where people come for entertainment or to learn something, but I think Instagram is overarchingly where people come to engage. I think from a brand, so I would separate my personal from the brand because my personal actually, I would say honestly speaking, my TikTok community is like incredibly engaged. And I think that TikTok users are really engaged with individuals. And I think that the Instagram community can be more engaged with brands as well.
Got
So
it.
I think Instagram has been incredible in terms of community building. Like anytime we have an event, it's always our Instagram audience that shows up. It's also where people are most likely to click links in order to actually make purchases. So yeah, I would say like Instagram for brands, I
Mm-hmm.
think, and also I think brands have such an advantage because if they are able, okay, so basically I think that the key to social media success for a brand is actually showing up like a human being, not being so polished. Again, you asked about how things have changed. I think that's also changed. I think you can't be so polished as a brand. I think you kind of have to show up as a person. And
Mm-hmm.
so Instagram has been really great like that because we're able to speak to our community immediately. We get all of these DMs. Again, it's like such a nice way for us to tap our audience to understand what they're missing, what they want more of, what products they like. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a great way to connect with people.
Yeah. And you mentioned kind of having this intuitive, like finger on the pulse, kind of you see the trends before they're happening. Like, where do you see social media happening with the wellness space specifically? Like more authenticity. I see that too. It's like you're absolutely
Totally.
right. Like any other insights that you're seeing from a forecast standpoint?
So, Will, I think it's really interesting because I think social media, you have to make it a point to have a diversity of people that you follow. Otherwise, you will be in like this, right? Like
Yeah,
just like very
siloed.
blinders on, siloed, exactly. And so I think for me, something I've always done is I've followed a diversity of people, like a diverse set of people. So I'm ahead on in terms of like what the experts like yourself, Andrew Huberman, like these people who are like really ahead of the game are saying, but I also have an idea of what the general population is thinking. So I kind of understand like if something, for example, is too niche or too ahead or like very much siloed to like the experts slash like early adopters, I know what those things are. And I think that you really have to get something when the time is right. So for example, when you think of bloating, right?
Hmm.
Maybe it was if it was 5 years ago that we'd launched the brand, maybe bloat wouldn't have been the right thing to launch with, right?
Hmm.
Because I think people were a little bit more afraid to talk about it.
Yeah.
Whereas when we launched, it was at this like exact right period where people were starting to talk about it. They were also much more interested in their health and wellness because of COVID.
Hmm.
And I think like it was the right time. The same way that sometimes you think a product will really hit, it's not that the product is wrong, it's just that sometimes you're too early, right? And also, the other thing on the flip side, if you see the proliferation of a certain trend and you're a brand, chances are you're probably too late because if it's already a trend, it's done, unless you can have like a really interesting take on this new thing. Like, let me give you an example: colostrum. Every brand under the sun is coming up with colostrum, right? So, unless you have a really unique way of presenting colostrum or you've kind of come up on some new science or data and you're just able to do something truly groundbreaking, I
Hmm.
wouldn't release a colostrum product right now. So
Yeah.
again, I think it's following like a diverse set of different people if you are wanting to kind of keep up with what's happening. And I think
Hmm.
also really understanding who the expert voices in your category are as well.
That's really great advice because it is. I mean, there's a lot of great products out there, but they don't all get legs and like hit sort of a zeitgeist moment, right?
Exactly.
So you need both. You need great formulation. You also need timing and all of that.
Hmm.
Yeah. So when are you all direct to, are you all online like direct to consumer? You're in Air One, right? I've seen you in Air One. So
Yeah.
when did the Air
We
One conversation start?
So we were really intentional about how we decided to kind of go a little bit more omni-channel and like proceed with retailers because I think something that younger businesses may not realize is that just because you get into retailer doesn't mean that your business is suddenly, going from 0 to 100. Once you're on shelves, you have to make sure that people are actually buying your product, that you know how to speak to that consumer. And just like basically, the more popular you are as a brand when you go into a retailer, the easier it is for you to succeed. So initially, Erewhon had reached out to us, I would say like year one of our business, but we didn't actually end up going in until 2022, which was 2 years into our business. And when we went in, we were really confident that we understood who the Erewhon customer was and that they understood who we were and respected us as a brand. So, we went in and we had pretty strong numbers to begin with. And I'm really grateful for kind of the way that we went in because I think we were really intentional. We were able to work through any issues that we had from like a back end operational perspective as well. But Erewhon has been a great partner for us. I think our consumer shops there. It's also for me, anytime we've gone in, like just like me as like the founder of the brand, just like shopping at Erewhon, anytime we've had like a display or something there and I see someone lingering, I'll always go talk to them. And it's just interesting for me to understand like what they're looking for, what they're excited about. If they've never heard of the brand, like why. Sometimes like people will be there and they'll like stop me and be like, oh my God, like I love constipation or I'm like a huge fan of bloat. And it's just really interesting for me to speak to them as well. So I think in terms of like what I can say when it comes to our retail strategy is like really be intentional about when you're going in and don't think that retail partnership is like your golden ticket. You still need to do the back end of like making sure that your brand is something that people resonate with.
Yeah, absolutely. Great tips. And you're obviously, for people that don't know, most people that listen to the podcast know what Air One is, but if you don't live in LA or you don't know, how would you describe Air One?
Ooh, okay. So Erewhon is an alternate universe. No, I'm just joking. It's basically this like very niche luxury grocery store. I don't know if it's luxury, but they're basically like ahead of the curve when it comes to what like the health trends essentially. So I actually remember, Will, I to LA like for the first time, maybe in like 2016, 2017. And
Hmm.
I went to Erewhon and I was completely gobsmacked. Like I filled up my entire suitcase with snacks because these were things that we just did not have in Canada. Okay. We just didn't have an Erewhon equivalent back then, but they have all of these different snacks, like foods, basically like any dietary restriction you have, don't worry about it. Erewhon's got you. And then they have an incredible range of supplements. They're obviously very particular about how they vet brands and products, which is something that, as someone who's gone through it, I know how rigorous they are. And it's not easy to get in. They really do hold their brands to a very high standard. So I think when you go in there, you're going in with like the peace of mind that thing that you're getting there is high quality, right? Whether it's like the produce or the meat or the snacks that they have, it's just all held to a very like high standard, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. I would call it luxury for sure. Definitely highly curated luxury.
Highly
I mean,
curated. Yeah,
not that all the products are luxury, like you said, but like as a brand, they
I
are like
agree.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like it's really interesting because I think Erewhon, it's something that if you're in a bubble of like health and wellness or a certain bubble in LA, like Erewhon is just something that's like a part of your everyday vocabulary. But I remember a few years ago, I did this podcast episode that went viral where someone was talking about Erewhon and how they go to Erewhon often. It was like a very casual conversation that you and I probably wouldn't think much of, but the comment section was on fire. Like people were so like polarized about Erewhon, and people were like, "This is gentrified LA. Like, this doesn't make any sense. This is not how LA was." And others were like, "Oh no, love Erewhon." So it's really interesting because I
Yeah.
think when you are in the health and wellness bubble, Erewhon is something that you take for granted. Like I live right next to one. Like I go there once, a week at the very minimum. But it is luxury because it's not accessible to everyone, both from like a distance and like I guess like a price point place as well. And also it may
Hmm.
not be of interest to everyone. But for someone who's into health and wellness or wanting to make the right choices, it is definitely highly curated.
Yeah. Have you seen the reels? I mean, it's like a hot thing, a hot topic thing where people make reels like kind of making fun of Airone with
Yes.
like the amount of money they spent. Like, oh yes, $5,000. It's not. I mean, they definitely exaggerate on social media, but I've talked to the Air One team before on different like meetings like we're talking now. And they told me that statistically, like the average Air One shopper isn't going to Air One for their grocery essentials. They're going for these specific items like
Yes.
yours. So like people can make fun of it, but they're not going to like they would go to Target or Walmart or the grocery store. It's very like niche items that you can only find there.
100%. And even me, right? Like I live right by an Erewhon, but I'm not doing my entire weeks of grocery shopping there. Like I don't need to, I
Right,
can get,
right.
I like pick and choose the bits and pieces that I can only get at Erewhon. Like I'm like really specific about certain things. And honestly speaking, I can't get it anywhere else. Whereas everything else, like as long as, for example, if my meat is like grass fed, grass finished, like in terms of beef, like I get it from a specific butcher, or like for my produce, like I'll go to the farmer's market or Whole Foods, you know what I mean? So I
Hmm.
don't think the average shopper is definitely not going there to do like their month's worth of groceries at
Yeah.
all. But
Yeah.
I've seen those videos. They're so funny. Actually, someone on my team sent it to me and we were like dying laughing at one of the videos. It was so good.
It's so funny because it is. Because if you did buy your grocery essentials, which you could, if that's you, go for it. But the average American's not going to do that, and that's okay. They're
No,
there. They're there for the items that we can only find at Air One. And I don't even live in LA,
absolutely.
but when I go to LA, it is like an alternate universe where, because I live in the Rust Belt in Pennsylvania, definitely not, it's not Los Angeles, not Abbot Kinney, but when I go there, it's like a special treat. It's like, it's fun. It's like, wow,
It
this is
is.
another world.
It's it's honestly like sometimes I'll just like when I have like people visiting, I'll just take them there because it's such an interesting place. And it's not, again, like you go there as like almost, I don't know, to like look and see what's going on. And again, if you are wanting to stay ahead of health and wellness trends, I actually think it's a really good place to look because you'll kind
Mm,
of see like this is definitely like very niche, but you'll see what's gonna hit because
yeah.
it's probably at Erewhon.
Yeah. And then they did. I mean, they kind of spanned like crossed industries where they did, what was it, like a Balenciaga fashion show. Can you explain what was going on there? Because it was like, I thought that was brilliant as well.
Honestly, yeah, like I think that they've definitely played their cards right. And I think that, I mean, have you ever seen another grocery store with their own merch? Like their tote bag is $80. Like it's insane. Like an
Yeah.
$80 tote bag. Oh my God. So yeah, they had this collaboration with Balenciaga. They did some sort of a fashion show and then they had like collaborative merch. And I think obviously it was smart for Balenciaga to kind of attach their name to Erewhon given that they were going through something. And then Erewhon as well, like to attach their name to a luxury fashion brand is smart because they got the celebrity presence as well. So they've been really strategic in terms of how they've played their marketing cards. And honestly, props to them because they're crushing.
Yeah, yeah. And they've been around, I think, since the 70s. That they're not like I mean, they're new as far as like pop culture is concerned, but they have actually been staples in Southern California for a long, long time. Um,
Which is also, I think, for that, like that's actually something interesting that I like to point out to other entrepreneurs that, they were there silently, like hanging out as like, this like mainstay in Southern California. And then like, I would say like 7, 8 years ago, they just exploded. And
yeah.
so sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but damn, they're like crushing right now.
Yeah, I remember because the one location's right by the CBS studios, and I was a student in Southern California 20 years ago, and my wife was pregnant and with our son, and so it would have been like 18 years ago. So we had to use the bathroom in Erewhon, I didn't even know what Erewhon was back then. I just was like, it was a health food store. Oh, cool, like health food. No clue. And then all these years later, I'm like, that was Erewhon, but no one knew back then. I mean, it was just another grocery store back then.
Totally, totally.
Yeah,
It's like changed a lot.
yeah. This has not been sponsored by Erewhon. I just was fascinated. I could talk to my friend about it. So thanks. All right, so let's go back to social media trends. Like, you talk about trends out there. I mean, the past couple years, it's been like the hashtag hot girl tummy issues was like a thing, right? I'm sure that was like you were part of those conversations, right? Because you have solutions for these tummy issues that I think it's such a great thing that women, where it's normally so stigmatized for everyone, especially women, that girls are feeling brave enough to share their stories on social media about their digestive problems. But what do you see online with these conversations that people are having?
I think, Will, like you're so right. I like equate this conversation almost to acne back in the day. Like I remember when I was growing up and it was like my mom's generation, acne was something that was like hush hush that you were almost like embarrassed about. And then this wave happened where people were open about their acne and that they were was fine that you had it. It was like a very human experience, but obviously people wanted solutions. And so then there was this like big saturation of skincare brands who were addressing that issue. And I really do think that like these tummy issues, it's the same thing, right? Where initially it was like, oh, like don't talk about the fact that you're bloated. It's like this like secret, but people were dealing with it. And then it came to a point where people started to talk about it and wanted solutions. And I think for us, where we play into the conversation is this is normal. It's part of the human experience. We all sometimes end up eating things that don't agree with us, even if we're doing everything right. It can be due to stress, it can be due to sleep patterns, it can be travel schedule, right? But we are there as like a tool in your toolkit, which we should all have. If you're having a bad day, if you're not feeling your best, you should have certain tools that'll help you feel better, right? So we're not here saying that this is something abnormal that you're dealing with. Absolutely not. Everyone deals with it, but you should have a solution to kind of help you through those days. So I think kind of that's where the conversation is going. And of course, when it comes to anything to do with this stuff, there is of course a population of people who are like, well, don't do anything about it because this is normal and we should embrace it. But I think when it comes to the discomfort feeling, that is what you should be addressing. It's not necessarily like, oh, I want to look, snatched in my jeans or my bikini. It's actually like, I think a comfort issue that you should be able to go on with your day feeling normal no matter what you've eaten. So like it's the idea of like food freedom, I think that we like to participate in.
Yeah. What do you think about the semaglutide, the GLP-1 agonist, Ozempic conversation that's happening in our space and on social media? What's your take on it?
So I think that, it's really interesting because initially when it came out, I think everyone was very like, this is something that we don't know what the like implications are for weight loss. I think there were a lot of unknowns. Now, I think as I've been in this space, a lot of doctors, like in the holistic world, who I actually really respect, hormone specialists, are talking about the idea of perhaps microdosing GLP-1s and how that is beneficial to a certain type of person. So I know Dr. Tina Moore is a huge proponent of that. I've heard on the Mind Pump podcast. I've just been hearing, this kind of conversation around peptides and GLP-1s being some of the ones that, are helpful there. So I think that right now, a lot of the population is starting to get familiar with it, perhaps using it. So I think instead of creating stigma around people who are deciding to go down this path, I think what's really beneficial is giving them tools to help them in their journey if they are deciding to go down this path. So, for example, if you are taking a GLP-1 and you're dealing with digestive distress, whether that's heartburn, bloating, constipation, what can we do as a health and wellness brand to help you in that journey? If you're going off of a GLP-1, what's a product that you can take to help you continue to see results? And if you are not someone who wants to take a GLP-1, is there a more natural solution, which was really our idea behind MB1? It's something that can help people who are not wanting to go down the GLP-1 path, but it's also really helpful for someone who's wanting to get off of it. So our goal is to we don't want any stigma around this. I think that if you choose to take it and you have the right practitioners to help you in your journey, power to you. At the end of the day, Will, and I'm sure you can agree with this, there is an obesity epidemic, right? And so if this is something that helps people have better habits, and I really do think that there's a big if attached to it, because I don't think that you can take this and then stop eating because it crushes your appetite and continue on with your life. And then you go off of it and you just gain the weight back. However, if you're using it to instill better habits, you're keeping your protein intake high, you're still going to the gym, you are using it as almost a launch pad to a better life, and you've never been able to get results before that, and you have the right practitioners to guide you, I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. That's like, of course, everyone has different opinions, but that's my opinion. And as a founder, I just want to help people, whoever is deciding to go on that journey.
Yeah, well said. I couldn't have said it better. We've used peptides for years clinically for different inflammatory problems or neuroprotective benefits or detox standpoint.
Yes.
And I have seen great success with peptides like this, microdosing it to be that other tool within their toolbox. So I'm on that team for sure of a both and not either or is that of course has to be paired with lifestyle changes, but if it could be like
Absolutely.
an accelerate, like get your head above water, speed things up, it certainly will give you great results and also encouragement. You'll want to keep doing the things that do love you back. So can we talk about that formula? That what's the actives in that sort of metabolic support formula?
So we use a number of different clinically studied ingredients to kind of speed up your metabolism, also help with things like blood glucose control, just having better hunger cues, because I think that that's also really important, kind of having better satiety. So the actives in it are African mango seed, citrus extract. We have a probiotic in there. We have brains of paradise, green tea extract. There's chromium. So basically things that really speed up your metabolism and help with hunger hormones and just like overall hormones as well that are attached to kind of like food cues essentially.
Yeah. So blood sugar stabilization, metabolic support, energy support. Yeah, I love that.
Exactly.
I love that. My friend, the podcast, as you know, it's called The Art of Being Well. At the end of the episodes, we have Your Art of Being Well. What's the worst tasting healthy food that you and Nish eat that tastes disgusting, but you still eat it because of health benefits, not for the taste?
Oh my God, this is such a good question. I I don't know if I have one.
It's okay.
I
Some people don't.
feel
Some people love everything they do and it tastes amazing.
I mean, okay, honestly speaking, at one point I used to have celery juice and I just could not stand the taste of celery. And for me, if I can't stand it, it's probably not sustainable. So I was like, okay, time to find other vegetables that are going to do it for me. And it just simply cannot be this. So
That's so
right
funny.
now, I think in general, when it comes to health, for me, it's like sustainability and I have to love everything that I do. I'm lucky because I grew up eating a lot of vegetables, so I like vegetables in general. Um, so yeah, I don't think there's anything that's like gross tasting that I do.
It's okay. What do you, where's somewhere that you've been to that was amazing that should be on other people's bucket list? Maybe this sort of unknown or not enough, not enough attention that you want to shed light on.
Okay, so I almost don't want to say this because I actually don't want a lot of people to go. But Nish and I go to Courchevel in the French Alps every year to ski. It's something that we've done for the this is going to be our like fourth or fifth year going. And honestly, Will, like to go to the mountains is like a different kind of peace. And we always do it like either at the end of the year or early on in the year. So like end of December, early January. And it's how we like end slash begin the new year. And it is the most like beautiful, peaceful, but still like there's still things there that I really love. Like the food is incredible. And like, if you're into fashion, there's like a whole scene there. So I feel like for me, it's like my slice of paradise. And if you are interested in like skiing or even après skiing, I feel like that's somewhere where everyone should go.
So where do you fly into? Like, where's the closest airport?
Geneva. So we fly into
Okay.
Geneva and then drive in from Geneva to Courchevel. It's about a 2 hour drive. It's a little bit of a trek, but 100% worth it. We always go for like a week to 10 days. So this year we're going, I think, for 8 days. And I honestly could not be more excited. Like once we're a month out, I'm like counting down the days. I'm so excited.
That's cool. Where's somewhere you haven't been that's on your bucket list?
Mm. Ooh, Bodrum in Turkey. That and like Japan is the other big one. So those two places, I honestly can't believe I've never been to Japan. So Japan, I would say for like all things like culture, history, art, like all of those things. Food, obviously, huge fan of sushi. And then Bodrum because I feel like they're the next like it beach destination, and always Nish and I once a year go to like a beach vacation in Europe in the summer, and so potentially Bodrum next year. Who knows?
Amazing. Do you have any sort of non-food, non-supplement, like wellness practices, biohacks that you do personally?
Yeah. So I would say two things. Number one, I'm really particular about um, not using my phone before going to bed. And I think having a wind down routine as an adult is super important because if you think about it, like kids have wind down routines, and sometimes we just lose that as an adult, and we're just supposed to go from like working and being on our phones to suddenly going to bed. Like, how are you supposed to feel sleepy? So, for me, my wind down routine is I put my phone away at 10 p.m. and I call those my phone office hours. Like after 10 p.m., I'm not looking at my phone. I have office hours, like I have the office, so like why would I continue to look at my phone? So that's number one. And then I read before bed. So I would say like that has been incredibly beneficial in terms of just my sleep quality. And also, I would say like creativity, mental health, all of the things, because I don't think anyone should be on their phone 24/7. And then the
Mhm.
second thing is in the morning, I journal every morning. I have now for 10 years, every single day. And that's like my foundational mindfulness practice. I think, and everyone should have a mindfulness practice. For me, that's journaling, meditation, breath work, you name it, like whatever works for you. But I feel like it makes me very clear. And again, I don't look at my phone until after I'm done journaling. And again, I feel like it just gives me mental clarity. It
Mhm.
allows me to go inwards, be very self aware. So, yeah, I would say those two are like pretty big things for me.
Great tips. And this is a good segue for my next and final question. What's a book that you've read? I want to like a running Art of Being Well book club, but it could be fiction book, nonfiction that just was paradigm shifting for you that you'd recommend for everybody.
Okay, so the first one that comes to mind from like a health and wellness perspective is The Betty Body by Dr. Stephanie Estima. I think that it's just really interesting to read a health and wellness book with like tips from a woman when it comes to things like your cycle and how you should be eating and weightlifting and like all of the things that we can be doing. So I feel like that's kind of a book that I find myself consistently going back to. And then the other one is a little bit different, but okay, the author is Jonah Berger, Berger. And the book is called, let me find it actually, it's on my Audible, but I really do think that it's something that everyone should read. It's called The Catalyst. So the reason I love this book is because it allows you to understand how to have conversations with people who don't necessarily agree with your viewpoint and still
Hmm.
being able to have that conversation, and how you are most likely to get someone to see your viewpoint. So the first story in there, I think, is like one of the most like moving case studies that I've ever seen, whereby essentially this rabbi starts to get like threats from someone in the KKK. And the end of the story is that the rabbi and the KKK member become best friends because the rabbi, through kindness and just dialogue and empathy, is able to show the other person who's so full of hatred that, there's nothing to be scared of. And I think oftentimes when people disagree with you or they're really emotionally charged, it is because of fear. And I think if you're able to get through a conversation and break past that fear and show them that there's nothing to be scared of, I think that that's where you can really like move things forward. And I think I see that a lot right now in terms of like the political landscape as well. Like I'm a Canadian, right? And I think something that I've done really well is I'm able to see everyone's perspectives. And it's so sad that people can't talk to each other without getting upset and emotionally charged. I think we would just land in a much more civil place if we were just able to talk to one another. So highly recommend everyone reads that book as well.
Oh my gosh. I mean, how beautiful of an arc this conversation was. We started how we ended how we started with connecting to people and transmuting negative energy. Oh my gosh, I love this. This has been a great conversation. Where do people go to learn more about your amazing work and your podcast? Give that a shout out too.
So you can find Arrae at arrae.com or arrae.co on social. Me personally, I'm Siff Haider on all social platforms, and my podcast is the Dream Bigger podcast. Will, you need to come on. We need to make this happen
Let's happen. What
very
happened?
soon. It's going to happen very soon. But thank you so much for having me. You're an incredible interviewer, and this was like honestly the best part of my day.
Oh, thanks, Sif. We'll talk to you soon.
Amazing.